Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Pyrrhic.
And I'm Victoria.
And this is the first video in our new series where we talk about the webtoon Let's Play by Manji.
I know exactly who you are. Martial law.
As you know, or if you don't know, if this is the first video that you're watching on our channel, we're currently on part 8. We just released part 8 of our Lore Olympus analysis, where we talk about Lore Olympus in agonizing detail. Let's Play has come up a few times in our discussion, just because it's another top romance webtoon on the Webtoons platform. And then I've seen a bunch of comments from you guys asking us to talk about Let's Play as well, because it has come up a few times. And between Lore Olympus and Let's Play, they're both, I would say Lore Olympus is very controversial right now, just because of the declining obvious quality in season 3. But Let's Play has also, I guess, become infamous since the season finale that was released a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so there's also been the latest development where Manji's pulled Let's Play from the platform. I guess because her contract wasn't renewed. There's been actually a lot of scandal hitting Webtoon these days. Webtoon has kind of been screwing over its creators. That's been all over Twitter and Reddit, and Manji kind of added to that, saying that they've definitely discriminated against her series when it comes to marketing and promotion, especially when you compare it to like Lore Olympus and the amount of promotion that it receives. So she has actually chosen not to renew her contract with Webtoons, and she says she's going to take it to a different platform as soon as she's able. I know that the contract stipulation that Webtoon usually gets their creators to sign kind of caps them at 2 years, where they're not allowed to post their work anywhere else, and Webtoon retains exclusive distribution. So Let's Play for now, it's available to read on Webtoon, but in 2 years it'll probably be gone. So it might take us 2 years to cover the series if you follow our Lore Olympus videos. So we want to get started on that.
Yeah.
And just like with Lore Olympus, I've read Let's Play like through to the end. I've read the whole series, and I've stated before that I'm kind of biased towards the series when it comes between Lore Olympus and Let's Play. I definitely like Let's Play better. Pyrrhic's never read it, just like with Lore Olympus. She's not a fan of romance comics, so she's never read Let's Play. So in this video, we read the first 10 episodes, but I don't know how far we'll be able to get. We have quite a few things to say, but I would say a lot of that's going to be in like closing thoughts. But spoiler alert, both of us like Let's Play better than Lore Olympus.
Yeah, at least in the first 10 chapters, there's a huge difference in terms of the basics, right? That just jumps out immediately. The basics being things like scripting, plotting, establishing character voices, paneling,
cinematography.
Yeah, cinematography, editing,
characterization.
Yeah, so that's all I have to say about my impression of the first 10 chapters. I know we talked about this before filming this video, but there's been actually a lot of criticism against Let's Play, where I've seen people refer to it as the worst webtoon of all time.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, like there's one video, I didn't watch the video, but I think the title was like the worst webtoon of all time that just keeps getting worse. Lots of things being said about Manji, and like accusing her of certain transgressions. And yeah, so I'm interested to see how it develops, and you know, the exact controversial things that people are talking about when they roast this series. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far into like the creator stuff, at least until like we keep going with the series, because I know we have brought it up a couple times on the Lore Olympus side, but I like to think that whenever we do bring up the creator stuff, it's kind of like, what was Rachel's mindset when she wrote the scene?
Yeah.
What is her mindset when she approaches writing this comic? And we try not to go too far into like anything that's like personal.
Yeah, we're not armchair psychologists.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here trying to like personally attack people. I'm just trying to go like, okay, what was going on in her brain when she wrote this scene? And like, because there's a lot of scenes in Lore Olympus, if you've been watching our series, where it's like, it feels like you almost need to be a mind reader to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
You know? So,
yeah.
I mean, with Let's Play, I don't really get that sense so far, and I've read the whole series, and I never really felt like it gets as opaque as Lore Olympus is. Yeah, so hopefully when we talk about Let's Play, we'll refer to the controversy if it's relevant to what we're saying, in terms of like the critique. Like, if this is a very controversial scene among like the Let's Play haters or the Let's Play critics, I guess it would be useful to kind of frame that versus our understanding of the scene, and whether or not we agree with that. I can tell you off the top of my head that I know the season finale was really controversial. I didn't think it was that bad. There's several points in the comic where it's like there's like comical levels of accidental racism, but again, it's like doesn't bother me, you know.
Yeah.
POC, we're both POCs, you know. It's like I faced real racism and like, you know, some off-color jokes and off-color like stereotypical aspects of some of the characters. Is like this isn't hurting anyone in real life.
Well, I mean, my thing is that like unless it's like unless it has anything to do with what the plot point is or the intentions of the writer or like something with the story, then I don't really see how it's relevant to point out, right?
Well, so I guess people would be like, why do you hate Lore Olympus and the misogyny in Lore Olympus versus Let's Play?
Well, because the misogyny directly has to do with what's happening in the story. Like, people only do things, like, the story only moves forward based on some of the misogynistic elements in Lore Olympus.
No,
right?
but I would say that there's, like, misogynistic stuff, for example, in Foundation. Foundation gets really misogynistic towards the end of the series. I would argue that parts of Three Body Problem are misogynistic and, like, paternalistic, but it doesn't bother me because it does bother me. I couldn't finish reading Foundation because it was so irritating to read with the way that the female character was portrayed, and I was just like, really? Like, there's misogyny and stuff where it's like incidental, like Foundation or Three Body Problem. Like Foundation I stopped reading because it was just so irritating to read the misogyny and like how the female character is portrayed that I, like at some point I just threw it against the wall and went like, F you, Asimov. And then with like Three Body Problem though, it's like, it's a little bit paternalistic because it's written by somebody who's from the PRC.
Yeah.
And like just the way that he views female characters and the way that he like kind of puts the gender roles onto them, it's like this guy doesn't really understand women very well and he like views them through kind of a paternalistic lens.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, you know, patronizing, but like the story's so good that I can just move past that. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. Like, we all know that Lord of the Rings has like racist elements and how the orcs are portrayed and like how the traitor humans are like the only brown people in the whole series. And like, yeah, that's it's a little bit irritating, but I would take Jackson's freaking Lord of the Rings trilogy over Rings of Power with a, you know, rainbow cast any day.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't affect the story. The story's still good at the end of the day. The cinematography's still amazing. The music's still good. Costumes are still good. And it's not sending like negative messages that are going to impact like my day-to-day life.
No.
You know, whereas like Lore Olympus, it's aimed at a young female audience. And the messages that it sends are harmful to that female audience. Like, you're encouraging and romanticizing things that if the female audience that read that in real life applied that to their real life because of how it was romanticized in this series that they grew up with, they would be in trouble. You know, like Rachel Smythe has romanticized sugar babies. Like she's done art of Daphne and said like, oh, this is Daphne. She used to work for Demeter until she got tired of being restricted on the mortal realm and then went to the underworld to be a sugar baby. Life is really good for her, you know? And it's like that kind of messaging is just so irresponsible for a young female audience. Like, these are the types of things that if you romanticize it when they're young and they think like, oh yeah, this is great, this type of life is aspirational, and then they go out and do that when they're older, like, they're gonna put themselves in harm's way.
Yeah.
Or it's like the Kardashians. Kim Kardashian showing off her body and like encouraging women to go under the knife and promoting impossible beauty standards and like the stuff that she's putting her own daughters under. Kim Kardashian is promoting unattainable beauty standards, and she actually kicked off like the BBL plastic surgery trend. Like, after Kim Kardashian got popular, BBLs went through the roof.
Yeah.
Like, that's a direct correlation. Like, I think there's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
Between like stuff being marketed that's going to actually have a real world effect and then the stuff that people are saying that is just like, yeah, it's bad, but I don't see how that's affecting anyone in real life.
Yeah,
you know?
but I mean, even apart from that, like, I would say from like a critical perspective of like somebody who's a creator, given the characterization of some of the characters in the story, the misogynistic elements don't really make sense, right? Like Persephone's character of supposedly being stifled by her mom and being coddled by her mom, it doesn't make sense then for her to say, I wish Zeus would marry me off to some random god. And that's misogynistic, and it also doesn't make sense from a writing perspective.
No, but like, you could argue that if Rachel Smythe is setting up it's like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Like, Blade Runner 2049 had misogyny that was endemic to the world, and it didn't really affect the writing, but it was omnipresent, in your face, constant misogyny, and like, it was unnecessary, and it was like, but again, I wouldn't even put Blade Runner 2049 in the same in the same avenue as Lore Olympus. Blade Runner 2049 to me is just like Foundation, where it's like, I don't like it, I'm not going to watch it. I'm kind of ticked off that it was in the movie for no reason, you know?
Well, I would disagree. I think it is in the movie for a reason. I think it's in the movie because it does generate a profound sense of like despair. Like look at the gender inequality in this society. Like
I don't think so, because most of the guys, like if that was the point, then like again, it's like Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah.
Where half the people who watch it, like that guy, that comedian, the one who got accused of like
Aziz Ansari.
Aziz Ansari, he was accused, I think, during Me Too.
Yeah.
Like that guy's favorite movie was Blade Runner, and I don't think he's a misogynist. I don't think he took the misogyny aspect at all. Like
yeah.
I don't think he digested that as being negative at all.
But that's why you would look at that element and you would look at the director's intention versus how well they were able to communicate.
But it's not
idea.
even the director, because Villeneuve didn't write it.
Right. Or
the
like
writer.
the writer, right?
Yeah.
You look at the writer's intention and then how well it was executed, and then you can criticize that and say, well, that really kind of fell apart because half the people watching it didn't really understand why that was in the movie or understand what the utility of that was.
But I don't think the writer had a charitable motivation including those aspects in the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's something to criticize, because it's like, why is it in the movie? That's why you're questioning why it's in the movie, because it's not clear why.
But
right?
even then, like Blade Runner 2049, it ticks me off and I'm not going to watch it, but it doesn't like make me go like, this is irresponsible, like Lore Olympus or Twilight.
No,
because Lore Olympus and Twilight are aimed at a much more impressionable audience.
Yeah, my biggest problem with Lore Olympus is that it takes harmful messages like it's enchanting and like romantic for your 40-year-old boss to be lusting after you when you're 19 years old, and your mom doesn't have your best interest at heart. She's a helicopter parent, so you should abandon your mom and then go with
and
the boyfriend.
showing like sexual desirability as a friggin' superpower with the fertility goddess thing.
Yeah,
that's disgusting.
Yeah, that's really like, and so because it's interwoven into the narrative, you can say, yeah, like this, you can criticize it, right?
But I'm saying it's worse than Blade Runner 2049 or even Game of Thrones, and I don't like Game of Thrones for similar reasons.
Yeah.
Because it's aimed at a young audience.
Yeah, but it's like, for example, I was talking to somebody else about this with like Breaking Bad, right? So at the end of season 1 of Breaking Bad, Walter White and Jesse Pinkman are witness to the violence of Tuco Salamanca at the junkyard, where I think he beats a guy to death. I haven't seen the series in a long time.
Yeah, he does. He beats a guy to death.
Yeah, he beats a guy to death, and then they're both like terrified. But Walter specifically feels really emasculated by that, and he feels like Tuco made him feel like a small man, right? So he wants to go be a big man, and so he decides to take out his frustrations on his wife Skylar, and he almost like forces himself on her. And so to me, it was very clear that that scene was put into the show to show that this guy is, not only is he like misogynist because he only married Skylar because she was like a dumb waitress, she's younger than he is, he's got like superiority over her.
I think the writers in Breaking Bad are freaking geniuses, because you compare Hank and Marie's marriage, it's clear that Marie makes the money between the two of them, and Hank is not threatened by that at all. And she's more educated than him.
No.
And then you compare that between Walter and Skylar's marriage, he's far more educated than her, way older than her. You know, like that, I don't think that was unintentional.
No, of course
because
not.
it's not like it's not like it's like a common theme. Like, I don't think the writers are like sexist, because you look at Hank and Marie and you look at Skylar and Walt.
Of course.
They're contrasting the two couples. Hank and Marie have a like very functional, healthy marriage.
Yeah.
And Skylar and Walt, it's clear that Walt's like a controlling narcissist.
Of course.
From the get-go. That's the whole point.
Yeah, and so somebody who doesn't really look at that scene critically might look at that and say, well, this is like offensive because it's triggering to people who've been assaulted by their, their husbands or whatever. But it's like, no, you look at the intention of the writer and what he sought to communicate with that scene, and then you say, well, he was successful in communicating that, so I don't have a problem with it.
But also the way it's shot.
Yeah.
Like, there's no scenes like in Breaking Bad like there are in Game of Thrones where it's like shot to be friggin' voyeuristic or titillating to a male audience.
No,
there's no male gaze in Breaking Bad.
No, because when you shoot it that way, you're undercutting the theme of what it's supposed to show. You're undercutting the fact that it's supposed to show Walter White as abusive, right? If you film it in a way that's like, sexualizing it. So I mean, absolutely, that's why
I didn't like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah,
because instead of being horrifying, it was like, people like Aziz Ansari watched it and they're like, this is my favorite movie.
Well, yeah, that's why you question why it's even in there, because you can't tell the intention of the writer or whoever included that in there, because the way it's shot and then the way that it's like portrayed makes you confused as to whether or not they're saying it's a positive thing or a negative thing.
It's like compare that to Handmaid's Tale.
Exactly.
Where that's the focus of the show.
Yeah, and the tone is very clear.
Right. So like coming back full circle, if Lore Olympus was meant to shine a spotlight on misogyny and women's roles in society, then she should have gone the Handmaid's Tale route, where it's like clearly shown as a negative, or like it's a gray area and like we should be questioning whether or not this is a positive.
Yeah.
Instead of just showing it as like a freaking like a fertility goddess, like give me a break.
Yeah. And then by comparison, the problematic incidental racism of Let's Play is it's like such an afterthought. Like it's a complete
afterthought.
Yeah.
It's like the accidental racism of like The Simpsons or The Office.
Yeah, it's not like intentional on Manji's behalf.
It's not malicious.
No, so it's not.
And
even
it's not even sending a bad message. It's not like the people who read Let's Play are gonna go out and join like again the alt-right or anything like that.
Yeah, like it's just completely like incidental and just like, well, this person's a little bit like they didn't really draw the line between like the implications there.
It's not like she's portraying like she has some stereotypical aspects, but none of the brown characters or the POC in this comic come off as like, oh yeah, all brown people are bad.
No.
It's just like there's some aspect where it's like, oh, that's a little bit stereotypical, but they're all good people. They're all well-rounded characters, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like, oh yeah, all like black people are evil or whatever, you know?
like Peter Jackson.
Yeah, like Peter Jackson. Like again, compare that to Lord of the Rings where all the non-white characters are actually evil.
Yeah.
This is just the case of like, yeah, Apu runs a gas station, he has a bunch of kids, and he has an unpronounceable name.
I am the god Ganesh. This wedding angers me. All will die unless it is stopped.
Like those are just stereotypes.
Yeah,
and it's not malicious.
Yeah, and then it doesn't really have anything to do with like the narrative or anything.
And
like
it doesn't
that.
send any harmful messages that get people to join Stormfront.
So I wouldn't look at that and say Let's Play is bad because of that. You know, like I don't think it's really relevant to critiquing the writing and the storytelling of Let's Play.
And it's the same thing with Lore Olympus too. We could have gone and said like with the treatment of like the way Psyche is drawn, we could have gone into the racist tangent for Lore Olympus, but I didn't think it was relevant.
No.
Because I don't think Rachel, she probably is ignorant. I mean, she's from New Zealand, so I don't know how diverse. I know they have a large Asian population, a Pacific Islander population, but I don't know to what extent there's like intermingling or whatever, or it's a very diverse society in terms of inclusion or class or whatever. But it's clear that, you know, she's just not very, she's kind of unthinking when it comes to that stuff. But I would argue that the racism in Lore Olympus is more easily examined from how the nymphs are treated, and that's the only time we bring it up. Yeah. Where it's like all the gods are racist against nymphs.
Yeah.
I think that's a bigger issue than like the way Psyche is portrayed.
When it comes to characterization, like she definitely doesn't want people to be comparing Persephone to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But she accidentally does stuff like that all the time. So that's directly related to the writing of the character and like the characterization of the cast. And so that's something to bring up. But when it comes to things like, you know, shades of skin color and stuff like that, I don't really see how that's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like that's like, especially when you know it's not intentional on the creator's part versus like some of the fetishization stuff, you know, whatever. They're white. I give them a pass.
Exactly. It's like, you know, I would rather, like I say this all the time, I would rather see like a movie, me personally, I'd rather see a movie with no female characters than a movie full of like horribly written female characters.
Right.
Where everything is just horrible.
Michael Bay.
And offensive.
Yeah, so we just talked about Manji versus Rachel and why we don't think Let's Play is as problematic.
Yeah, and I think we said, like, specifically, I wouldn't talk about, like, shades of skin or the incidental racism in here because that doesn't really have to do with the structure of the story and the writing of the story because it's incidental.
It's incidental, but I also think it's not as negative, like, there's not as much of a negative messaging problem as Lore Olympus. Like, again, it'd be one thing if she, like, had a COVID-19 subplot and Vicky came back from China and brought it and gave everyone COVID, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that'd be one thing. But, you know, that's a totally separate matter from the way that misogyny is, like, endemic, inherent, and, like, friggin'
glorified.
Yeah, fetishized in Lore Olympus and then aimed at young girls.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. Do you want to talk about the criticism of Let's Play?
Sure, I mean, because I don't really know a lot about the criticism.
But you keep saying that you've heard people say it's worse than Lore Olympus.
Yeah, and I don't really know where that's coming from. A lot of people point to... I think, honestly, Manji just has, like, a sense of humor that's a little bit, dated, I guess, compared to other people's senses of humor. Like, she has, I mean, she's got pictures of, like, Sam as a sheep with Charles.
Oh, that's weird.
Like
yeah, that's weird. But again, like, it's strange. It's strange, and it makes me go, like, wow, what was she thinking when she put this out? And there's another one that's, like, famously bad, that's, like, young Sam giving Charles a box of chocolates for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, she's like 8 and he's like 14 or something in that picture.
I don't know what their ages are clarified to be.
Yeah, no, she said that. She said it's on her Twitter.
But people are like, oh, you drew 8-year-old Sam with boobs, and like, I don't see it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see it. I think that's like, if you compare that to the way the women are drawn in Lore Olympus, I think people are making a big deal out of nothing in that picture.
Yeah.
She doesn't have boobs here.
No.
It's just a puffy shirt. Look at how big the sleeves are.
Yeah, that's not even where your chest would be.
No. It's like a puffy shirt. She doesn't have boobs. What? No, it's a joke. Because he's got a sweat drop. He's like, what the F is this?
Yeah, he's not like grabbing her or
He's
anything.
not like blushing or anything.
It's not like Hades grabbing that little kid, you know?
Nope. Yeah, she's just giving him a Valentine's Day card, and he's just like, this is embarrassing. So that's what I'm saying. Like, people love to jump down her throat. But the main character in friggin' Lore Olympus is 19, and the love interest is 45, and she's also up to his hip.
Yeah.
And she's drawn and acts like a child. And you've seen how Sam is characterized in Let's Play in the first 10 episodes, and how Charles is characterized, and he's only 8 years older than her.
Yeah.
You know, like, that age gap, I don't think you can compare the two.
Yeah, and it's not like a huge part of the story, or it's not like something that's...
It's not something that's emphasized.
Yeah, like a lot of
And
attention is
romanticized.
drawn to it.
Yeah. There's no creepy, like, dynamic between the two. I would say that Sam is 23, and the way she's characterized, the way she acts, she doesn't act like a child. She acts like her age, and at some point she's pretty assertive.
She's very relatable.
Much more so than Persephone is.
Yeah.
Persephone, who never gets angry, you know? And Charles is, he's what, 31? That's not that big of an age gap. When you're 23 and your boyfriend's 31, that's not that big of an age gap.
No, I mean, like,
it's not like she's 17, he's 25.
yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between, I think, a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old. If you look, like, if you want to get, like, technical with it and talk about when your brain stops growing and, like, your ability to accurately assess risk and reward and stuff like that, there's a sizable difference there.
I think people just infantilize young, like, people in their early 20s. But the fact of the matter is, if you're 23 or 25, you're, like, pretty close to an adult / are an adult. If you're 19, I would say you're still a kid.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've met 23, 24-year-olds at my workplace. They're young adults. You know, they're, like, they look like kids to me. And, like, yeah, that makes me look, I guess that makes me sound really old. They look like kids to me, but the age gap between Charles and Sam is pretty close to my age gap with, like, a early 20s, like a 21-year-old, 22-year-old. And, like, I wouldn't feel like I was taking advantage of a 21-year-old if I dated them.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is...
It would be awkward because, like, we're in different stages in our life, but it wouldn't be like me dating an 18-year-old. It would just be gross.
Yeah, I think another thing that has a lot to do with it as well is the upbringing of the character and their life experiences.
Yeah.
And Persephone is specifically written as a character who's been sheltered all her 19 years of life.
Not only is she written like that, it's celebrated about her.
Yeah.
That aspect about her, when she says stuff unknowingly and naively, that's when Hades blushes the most, which is so creepy and disgusting.
Yeah, I think somebody shared a screenshot of Rachel saying, oh, she absolutely has no idea how attractive she is at all. None whatsoever. And it's like...
Why do people keep writing that?
Why not?
Why do people keep writing this in, like, romance novels? Like, why is this, like, that's the thing that I don't get, and that's what we keep talking about in Lore Olympus, like, the distance between the audience and the character, because, you know, the audience is, like, thirsting after Hades.
Yeah.
And then for the main character to have, like, no feelings and, like, no understanding of that at all, it's like, why would you make that your main character for your audience to project onto?
No.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's like a common trope in romance.
Yeah, so...
Even Let's Play kind of has that.
It does a little bit, but she's like that with everyone, though. It's not just with the guys, right?
Oh, yeah, Persephone flirts with everyone except for Hades.
Yeah. And Persephone knows, like, what blackmail is. She blackmails Minthy. She knows...
She manipulates people.
Yeah, she knows how to scheme, but Sam is like that with everybody.
I mean, she's just kind of socially awkward.
Yeah, and you can tell she's like that with everybody because even her own friends kind of infantilize her.
Yeah, and her own... And, well, she's not socially, like, unaware. It just seems like she's socially awkward around guys. And, but, like, when it comes to her competence, her intelligence, her independence, she lives alone. She has her own job.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing her own thing with indie games.
Yeah.
She has her own goals, aspirations, desires. And then she even asks Charles to be put on a project that she wants to work on.
Yeah.
So she's self-assertive. She's pretty assertive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just has, like, a little bit of an issue with confrontation, which
Yeah.
is, like, that's relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she's a much better character. Like, much more relatable and creepy, less creepily written / framed.
And that's all stuff that, we got in the first 10 chapters. So I guess with that being said, do you want to just get into the chapter by chapter
analysis?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to go panel by panel. But I think it's really interesting to note that the first chapter starts off with a little bit of backstory with Sam. When I was little, I fell in love with gaming. Genre never mattered. She really loves games. She even played competitively. And then she got her degree in computer science. This is all setting up the character and like what her goals are, her aspirations to go into video game design. She worked on creating her first indie game, spent countless hours on it. And I like how in these subsequent panels, you see her in different outfits at different points in time. So the first one's like daytime, second one's like evening, and you see other people in her college partying, and she's still stuck in her room alone. And then the final one is like nighttime, different outfits, so you can tell this is over a period of time.
Yeah.
She works on this game constantly, and she's finally created it, and she's submitted to this independent game website where she has an opportunity to be picked up by a dev company if she does really well. So it's kind of like Webtoon, but for indie games.
Yeah.
And I really like how Manji like stuck to writing what she knows. It's clear that Manji's a gamer. She's read a lot of shoujo manga, so she just decided to write like a shoujo manga type story, rom-com, about gaming.
Yeah.
And you could tell she did research, or she was familiar enough with the topic where it's like, there's never a moment where I'm just like, that's not how that works,
Right, yeah.
Like Lore Olympus, or like the world building like suffers or sucks, like in Lore Olympus.
Mm-hmm.
She has this like website where she submitted her game, and I just noticed in general there's a lot of effort put into like the details in these early episodes of Let's Play. And like I guess just to talk about the art really quickly, the characters are much more competently drawn than Lore Olympus.
Yeah,
and
she drew reference sheets.
Yeah,
so that's one win for Manji.
It's consistent. And then the other thing is, her visual storytelling is really good. There's never a point where you read a panel sequence and you're like, what the F's going on? Why are these characters facing this way, then facing that way? Where are they in the room? She does use CG assets, which is like controversial about Let's Play, but it speeds up the production a lot. And I would say the worst aspect of the art for Let's Play is the color theory. The color theory is not very good. And then her fashion sense. I mean, she's not supposed to be a fashionable character, but it's like, the colors are... It would look better in black and white.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
So she's got a pretty high score for her first game. I had hoped that by being an engineer, a game company might offer me a job in game development. Unfortunately, things haven't quite worked out that way. And then you realize with that sentence that we're in the present now, and we're getting these vibrating noises from her phone next to a cup of coffee. And it says she's got 2,500 new messages. There is a laptop playing a YouTube video from this character, Martial Law, and he's playing a game, and we're assuming that it's her game.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again that the introduction to this sequence is very natural. There's a really good flow between like her backstory as a character to zooming in on the computer, and then you see Martial Law playing the game, then we cut to Martial Law playing the game, and then we come back to Sam.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a very smooth series of panels, smooth transition, good storytelling. Monsters in this world are really strong, but there are a few goblin chodes over here. I'll use this wooden sword to gank them. Have at you. Problem? Ow, that's a lot of sharp objects in tender places. I think it's safe to say that this is the end of Mini Lawman. And since I've yet to see any place to save my game, this is the end of my attempt at playing Roommate. And they have this "you died" screen that's very similar to like Dark Souls. So her game's supposed to be like really hard, just like Dark Souls is. And then Marshall gives her some criticism, saying the game is not currently playable like this. You're going to anger your players if you put monsters in the world with no way to defeat them, and they'll really hate the game if you don't give them a way to save their progress. This game needs a lot of work. I've played a lot of good and bad games as a VTuber, but I've never played a game where I struggled to progress more than I did in this game. I can tell you tried hard on this game and you're offering it for free, but you should get more critique for a game before you post it for people to play. And then we cut from this laptop to a coffee cup that's been overturned, possibly in like surprise, as she's like listening to him review her game, or when she saw the reviews on her game. And then we focus on her dog, and then we see Sam in the present day. Marshall's talking about how he's moving, which is set up for him moving into the apartment complex where she lives. And then she's looking at her score on Indigeneer, and it's tanked because of this video.
Yeah. And I did see that there were 12 reviews beforehand, and now there's 2,456 reviews, and she got 2,451 messages. So yeah, she had 12 reviews to begin with, and then overnight, basically after this review was posted, she just got a bunch of messages. And this is really interesting because rereading this, you're going to anger your players if you put monsters in the world with no way to defeat them, and they'll really hate the game if you don't give them a way to save their progress. What I'm saying is this game needs a lot of work. He's criticizing it purely from the perspective of somebody who's just consuming the game and not really thinking about the themes of the game.
Or the intention.
The intention and the way that the game is supposed to, the way, what the game is trying to communicate, right?
It's a shallow critique.
It's a shallow critique, but it's just like the critique that artists get all the time on like their webcomics or their webtoons or something, right? So you can tell that she's somebody who creates, and then she's getting a criticism from somebody that it's totally missing the mark.
It's unfair.
Right? It's an unfair critique because it's like if somebody read a webcomic and said, oh, the pacing is too slow, I'm getting bored, I don't like your character designs because I just don't think they're good.
It'd be like if somebody read Death Note and then they said Light is unlikable.
Yeah.
That's what that would be like.
Yeah.
Light is an unlikable protagonist. He's such a douche. I don't like Light Yagami. It's like, you're not supposed to like Light Yagami.
Yeah, or like, even apart from that, like, the fact that Death Note is in black and white makes it hard for me to read it, so I think you should do it in color. It's like, if your only critique is that you want the creator to change their product so that it's easier for you to enjoy, that's not really helpful as a creator, right? That's not really a criticism that takes into account the stuff that you put into it from like a creative perspective. It's all about consuming. And it's like very telling that people who just consume all the time and don't really engage with stuff critically, they only think about media in terms of how it makes them feel, right? So I think the fact that she was able to communicate that with his critique and give you a totally different perspective between his character and then Sam's character, who is a creator, she understands like the unsolicited criticism that creators get all the time.
But it's really interesting though, because just in the first 10 chapters of Let's Play, there's not a moment in this comic where you have like the show don't tell problem.
No.
I don't think there's a single moment in this comic where like Manji's telling us something without showing us.
Yeah.
I think every single thing that's come up in the first 10 episodes was set up beforehand, and it's mostly something that's shown to you.
Yeah.
Like it's Sam versus Marshall's perspectives, and then you have the bit where which one is the really good one? Oh, Sam at her workplace getting the crap duty, you know, being treated like an intern. You know, it's not like, again, to compare it to Lore Olympus, there's so many times in Lore Olympus where you have an internal monologue or a character saying XYZ, but it's like, we never saw XYZ.
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm a joke.
Everyone thinks I'm a joke, or nobody knows who I am. We've never seen that. That was never built up to. That was never set up, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in Let's Play, Sam doesn't even say, Charles treats me like an intern. We see that. He asks her to make coffee, and then he gives her, like, the crappy intern job just because the actual intern that they have is incompetent, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't, like, there's so much more in the storytelling that's just so much more competently done. It's, like, refreshing.
Yeah. It's
coming from Lore Olympus.
It's refreshing, and you can tell that she's got a script that she iterated on.
And she's planned more than one episode in advance.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff setting up in the first episode that comes up 2-3 episodes later.
Yeah. So then her account ends up being flagged for suspicious activity. And then the final message that she looks at is, Marshall brought me here. And then we cut back to Marshall saying, you know, concluding his broadcast. And so then back to Sam's monologue. She thinks that her career as a developer was already over before it truly started. So another thing we get in this comic is establishing shots.
Yeah, we don't get establishing shots in Lore Olympus.
Yeah, and so she goes out into the hallway, and then we see that she's been crying. She's got the
and
redness.
that's the first time we see her face in the present.
Yeah,
is when she's crying.
And it's a good shot. Like it's calling attention to the emotions of the character, right, and her reaction. And again, it's show don't tell. And then she sees boxes in the hallway, and then finds out that her new next door neighbor is none other than the famous VTuber Marshall Law.
I think the only problem with Let's Play is that it's occasionally cringy, and this is like one of those instances where he accidentally friggin' brushes against her boob, and then we cut to him going like this sensation, which is just like anime humor.
Yeah,
but it's like we don't see Sam reacting to that.
No, it doesn't go anywhere.
No, it doesn't go anywhere. She just like can't tell who it is because she lost her glasses because she's like Velma.
Yeah.
And then, but martial law is a nice guy. He's not a creep.
Yeah. So then that's the end of the first chapter.
He looks like Sasuke.
Yeah, it looks like Naruto.
It looks like Naruto. The art style is very similar to Naruto because she was a Naruto fan artist.
Yeah. And so, realizing her bad luck, she wonders how this is even possible. And then she says that there's 18 million people in the city and I had to run into him. She said she's based in California, but like we said, we don't know if this is Los Angeles.
No, I couldn't tell if this was Los Angeles or like New York because New York has like 19 million people. Los Angeles only has 13 million, so I'm like, I don't know where she is. Fictional city, I guess.
So he gives her glasses, and then the dog jumps into action and stops him from getting the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we've got like the dated meme humor.
Oh yeah, meme humor.
Yeah, so...
And this came out in 2018. That was already dated by 2018.
Was
it's like
it?
2009 humor, dude.
I don't know if it was 2009.
The
humor.
doggo with the rising sun behind it.
Yeah, the Shiba Inu memes.
Pretty sure it's like dated. It was like at least 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
If not 2008. Pretty sure.
But I mean, obviously from these like interactions and panels, and the comedy is like a lot more intentional. You can get a much better sense of the tone just from like right off the bat, the sense of humor that she has.
Yeah, there's no mixed tones or like tone whiplash so far.
Yeah.
There's like some scenes where I'm like, oh, this was overly indulgent, this was a little bit pointless, but it's nothing like Olympus, which wastes your time for episodes at a time, introducing new plots that go nowhere.
Yeah, it's not
There's
like
only like one focused plot.
Yeah, I mean they don't have her like I don't know, bawling about how she's no longer a developer and she's like destitute because she has no money. And then, like, she's gonna get evicted, and then her dog farts, and she starts laughing. Just as an example, like, random example about a dog farting.
Random
you know?
example has nothing to do with...
Totally random.
Totally,
you know?
totally out of, from our own skulls.
Yeah, so, he picks up the dog and gives it a cuddle, but then she realizes that, she puts her glasses back on and says, my dog doesn't like being held by anybody but people he knows, right? And so, this is where he introduces himself. Not really formally, because he introduces himself again later.
Yeah, he tries to introduce himself, and she goes, I know who you are. You're martial law, and then she, like, drops a bunch of, facts about him. Internet personality with over 3 million followers. Your videos consist mainly of playing survival horror games, but you also feature the occasional indie game, and then he thinks that she edits his Wikipedia page, that she's, like, a fan, and he's, like, super grateful. And again, like, martial law, like, he's a nice guy. Like, from everything that he does, there's never a moment where I'm just like, this guy's a creep, this guy's a freaking weirdo.
Yeah.
Like, even though he accidentally, like, freaking groped her, he wasn't, like, drooling over her. You never see him drooling over Sam like a creep.
No.
I mean, I think that's realistic, because he's, like, a decent-looking guy. He has a girlfriend.
Yeah.
He wouldn't just be drooling over the first woman he comes across, like some starving man in the desert, you know?
Like, I don't know, if his long-term girlfriend refused to show up to, like, an event with him.
When he was planning to propose.
When he was planning to propose, and then he sees this woman in the crowd, and this, like, just salivates and says, oh my gosh, I have to know who that is, while, like, checking out her measurements and all that stuff. Yeah, he doesn't do that. Also, I will say that in his YouTube video, he said that he has to move, and then he kind of alludes to the fact that some fans, like overzealous fans,
amorous fans
came to his previous residence.
So he's got fangirls.
He's got fangirls, and you know the fact that between him saying that and the fact that all his fans bombarded and review bombed her page, right? That his fans are little, you know, those.
He's got like a parasocial personality or parasocial relationship thing going on.
Yeah, but even when he meets somebody who he thinks might be a fan, he's like nice to them.
Yeah, he's really nice.
Right, so that gives you an indication of his character, and it's like it gives you an idea of like who he is as a person.
But even in the YouTube video, he wasn't a jerk. He was just trying to give constructive criticism.
Yeah. What he thought was constructive, but it was really, again, like from the perspective
it's a misunderstanding. Yeah.
So she says, I'm not an editor, I'm Sam Young, and I'm a game developer. And so he responds with a lot of enthusiasm, again, showing, like, how much of a nice guy this guy is. And she says that her game is Ruminate, and then he understands, like, why she's so, like, standoffish towards him.
Yeah, and then he says, like, oh, if you work in this business, you're gonna have to learn how to take criticism. I wasn't trying to be mean, you know, and it's like, it'd be like if Rachel ran into us in the street. I would be like, oh man, Rachel, you have to understand, if you're putting your comic out there for free, I'm not trying to be mean, you know? I'm just criticizing your work, you know? Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but I would also be like, yeah, I don't think you're, like, I don't like your comic, and I don't like you as a person, but I'm not trying to bully you, you know?
Yeah.
As much as I don't know her, from what I do know, I don't really like her as a person. And it's the same thing with, like, our, you know, people who talk to us. Like, yeah, I expect to see the occasional negative comment because we're putting ourselves out on the internet in public.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put myself out on the internet. I wouldn't post my work on the internet, like whether Webtoon or YouTube, and expect to only receive positive comments. Like,
I would be suspicious if I was only getting positive
If
comments.
I was only getting positive comments, I'd be like, is somebody deleting the negative ones?
Yeah.
But also, like, just getting a high ratio of positive to negative comments is like, you're gonna receive negative comments as long as the ratio is overwhelmingly positive, or the negative comments are more, like, constructive rather than just hateful.
Yeah.
Even the hateful ones, there's some people out there with no life.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And if you put it on the internet, it's anonymous. That's the nature of putting your work out there in public for people to anonymously comment on.
Yeah.
So, like, he's trying to give that feedback to her as a creator. But she, having her, like, she's on the side where it's like, yeah, I understand positive and negative criticism, constructive criticism, but what happened is your fans completely review bombed me and you misunderstood my work. So actually, what you did isn't constructive criticism. You basically ruined my career.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't verbalize that he.
No, she's non-confrontational.
Yeah,
but that's her side of the story.
Yeah, she does tell him that you didn't even play the game correctly, and it's again going back to that discussion we were having at the beginning, where it's like, what's the intention of the director here? Were they able to successfully convey that idea, like in the case with Vince Gilligan and that scene in Breaking Bad?
Right.
Yes, he was able to correctly convey the idea that Walter is like an abusive person with that scene. So I didn't take issue with that scene.
Right. Versus Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, where it's like what you're trying to communicate is not coming through here. So you criticize that and say, why don't you do it like this instead? Right. And so here he didn't even fundamentally understand the theme of her game.
Right.
Because he skipped the introduction, he admits.
Yeah. Blah blah blah, boring, TLDR, yeah.
Yeah. And so he says, I get paid by gaming companies to feature their games, and I played yours for free. You got a lot of publicity at no cost. I basically did you a favor. And so then she says, well, you have no idea what you've done, and if you try to do that again, I'll sue you, right? For violation
I already
of
like her better than Persephone.
Yeah, violation of my intellectual property. That was like a really cool,
gotcha moment. Girl boss moment.
It was pretty cool, because it's like...
It wasn't like the blackmail moment in Lore Olympus, where you're just like, wow, what a douche.
No,
or the eyeball moment in the hospital, where you're just like, wow, what a douche.
She shut him up good, basically. And so that's the end of chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
So then going on to chapter 3.
We go to the coffee shop called The Daily Grind.
Yeah.
And then we see the barista D. You doing all right there? I'm ready to log out of life now. And I think in the first episode, the attention to detail on the door of her college dorm, it said D and Sam.
Yeah.
So you know that this is her old college roommate who works at this coffee shop. And I guess we can save this for the end of the video, but I'll just say that from the biggest problem in the first 10 episodes of Let's Play is that there's too many characters. And you start to see, like, a bunch of them start to get introduced here. So there's, like, all of her friends who are introduced in this chapter, and then in the next couple chapters, she goes to work. And then all of the people that she knows at work are introduced in those chapters, and it's just, like, it's like a common mistake among first-time webcomic creators and, I guess, story writers.
Yeah.
And, like, we fell into this trap, too, with one of our first attempts at a webcomic, where it's just, like, there's just too many characters. Unless you're, like, writing Attack on Titan or Naruto and planning on doing it for 10, 15 years, for a webcomic to have, like, a salient, cohesive, satisfying story with, like, the maximal number, or the maximal potential and the maximal impact, I would say cut the cast down. I think, with Let's Play, the characters that we're introduced to are Sam, Marshall, Dee, Link, Angela, Vicky, Charles, Umed, and then Sam's dad, and then I don't think the intern and then Lucy, the secretary, are important characters.
Same with the landlady, probably.
Same thing with the landlady. I don't think she comes back. But then there's, like, her gaming group, and then that's, like, Olivia, Dallas, who's Link's younger brother, and then there's another guy named Abe, I think. So that's, like, already, like, 12 characters.
He's not introduced in the first 10 chapters.
No,
though,
he's
is
not,
he?
but he's introduced later.
Yeah.
And I just think that's way too many characters. I think, like, again, we could save this in-depth conversation to the end, but I think for the purposes of the story, because I know where the story goes, I think you should have just had Sam, Marshall, Charles, and then instead of Umed, I think her coworker who sticks up for her should have been a female character who's her slightly older coworker, maybe in her early 30s, who's already married and like maybe has kids or is like gets pregnant during the run of the comic. And I think that character should have been her best friend and her coworker.
Yeah.
So you can condense, like the whole thing is like you need a best friend character to show that Sam's not alone, but then you also need a coworker character because a lot of the comic takes place in the office. I think those characters should have been condensed. And like just wherever you can combine plot points, like with Lore Olympus, combining plot points would have served the story better. Let's Play combining characters would have served the story better.
Yeah.
Because I know what she was trying to do with having her have an active social life, but I think her coworker could have been like you could give her a coworker and give her an old college friend.
Yeah.
And the old college friend can be like less common because maybe her old college friend is like a hippie type like Vicky,
Yeah.
who's kind of like flighty and like impulsive, and like you could contrast the college friend who's like basically living the dream YouTuber life or whatever with, you know, like the trendy young person life who's always traveling or whatever with the coworker who's like stable, responsible adult, and there's like two paths that Sam can go down, you know.
Yeah. And
like you have the foil characters, like one of her best friends is irresponsible but lives a great life, and the other one is really responsible and steady and like has it all together.
And that also kind of mirrors the dynamic with the love interest too.
Exactly.
Right?
That would have been
So-
that would have been more interesting because Charles is like one of the love interests who's her boss, and he's like older and like more established, I guess. And then Marshall, who's like the more childish love interest, who's like similar hobbies to Sam.
Yeah.
And then I think you should have also Marshall Law's girlfriend hasn't been introduced yet, but I like her character.
Yeah.
And I think they should have kept her in.
Yeah.
So that would be like maybe 5-6 characters instead
Right.
of like, I think there's like 12 to 15. Because there's also Marshall has a sister, and then there's like family drama on Marshall's side, and there's just way too many characters.
Yeah, I would say unless you're planning to kill them off, like an Attack on Titan or Danganronpa, don't introduce so many characters.
I think
right?
in a webcomic especially, because you're so limited by the storytelling, and it's so slow compared to a comic or a movie or a TV show, you should definitely have a core cast of like 3 to 5 characters.
Yeah.
Including the villain.
Yeah.
You know? I wouldn't, and like those are the characters with arcs. Everyone else is just like a cool one-off character or like a recurring character who doesn't really get a huge part in the story, you know?
Yeah.
But like 3 to 5 should be like your main cast.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, in this coffee shop scene, we're introduced to Link. Someone's been stealing the toilet paper.
Just as a side note, the consistency, like, wow, this is really like a low bar, but again, you know, Lore Olympus and all that. Sam leans over on the countertop and Dee takes Bowser and she's holding him like a baby for the entire exchange. It's not like he was there 1 second and then he's completely gone and then next, and it's like, where'd he go?
Right.
You know? So, just really good continuity in between panels.
And the characters look very similar.
Yeah.
Like, she's drawn these characters over and over. They all look different.
Yeah.
Like, Marshall doesn't look like Link, and Link doesn't look like Charles.
Yeah.
And Sam doesn't look like Angela, and Angela doesn't look like Vicky. They all look different, even though it's not a very realistic art style. They're all consistently different.
Yeah. So she explains what happened with the game and with Marshall.
Yeah.
And then they say, is there any way that you can find a way, like, around that?
Mhm.
So, kind of showing that these guys obviously care about her.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she explains that they're going to be contacting her in 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, they say, let us know if we can help you in any way. And then her other 2 friends come in, and that's Angela and Vicky.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how Angela looks like she's wearing pajamas.
Yeah. But again, like, just the way that they show up and the way that they're characterized in this one chapter, like, it's very clear. Like, she's, like, not only is she good at consistency and setup and payoff, but there's also a low bar, but it's cleared by Let's Play with, like, the character voices. Like, within the first couple sentences, you already know everything about these characters.
Yeah.
Like, Dee's kind of, like, the maternal, motherly type. Link is, like, he's not very close to her, but he's interested in Sam, and he's, like, wants to help her out. Marshall's a nice guy who's, like, overly excited. Angela's hot-headed, but
she's
very
also like
protective.
she's like a mama bear. So she and Dee are both kind of the protective.
Yeah, but
maternal type.
Angela is more like a hothead who's
Aggressive,
like an aggressive friend. and then Vicky is just like a very sensible, low-key,
Yeah.
patient, wise character.
And that's why, because I actually looked into it, the trope in anime of like a character who always has their eyes closed is sometimes referred to as like kitsune no me, which means like fox eyes.
Fox eyes.
And it's a character who's known for being wise or like difficult to read, and who always seems like calm and happy.
Oh, so like
As,
Brock.
Yeah, like
Who's the wise, like out of the 3 characters in Pokemon, Brock's the wisest and the oldest.
yeah. So according to the TV tropes, yeah, according to the TV tropes page, which shows Brock as the example, and so basically it's usually more of a pronounced squint, and it's an old device to imply wisdom. More recently, it's been used as a device to show wise guys, and so this device, when used as such, is called kitsune no me in Japanese, fox eyes or shifty eyes in English. And a common variation of this trope is to make the character close his or her eyes into an arc rather than a simple horizontal line. And then characters whose eyes are fixed in that position are generally optimistic and almost always unconditionally happy, but more often down to earth instead of ditzy.
And that fits Vicky to a T.
Yeah, these characters may be prone to comic obliviousness, but outright stupidity is rare. The exact way the closed eyes are drawn can add a lot to this trope, representing anything from serenity, dignity, smugness, humor, indifference, or even someone trying to fake any of those. And finally, they're also sometimes used to depict people who are down and out with their lives as a sign of depression, but where they overlap with another trope called Beware of the Nice Ones, the character's eyes may open when it's time to get dangerous.
That was that guy in Fullmetal Alchemist. There's a Chinese character, he's coded as Chinese, in Fullmetal Alchemist who has eyes like that, but it's not racist, first of all, because, well, okay, so it's Japanese, so they can still be racist against Chinese characters.
Right.
But he has a little sister who's also, like, coded as Chinese from the Chinese country, and she has, like, huge eyes. So
Yeah.
it's not just a race thing, it's a trope. It's like an
Yeah.
anime trope. And unfortunately for Manji, she just copy and pasted the anime trope onto the one Asian character.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that's like an unfortunate, like, unfortunate implication thing, but it's not really like, because she fits the description as being wise to a T. She's like the wise, level-headed one.
Yeah, but the other
So.
thing we were saying is that Manji used to be a fan artist for Naruto, so she basically, like, the earlier chapters is like the Naruto style to a T.
Yeah.
And so everyone basically looks Asian.
Yeah.
Because the anime style, like, it's just stylized Asian features. So they all have, like, rounded noses, slight eyelids, you know, not deep set eyes, but, like, look at the way Angela's drawn here. She just has a slight eyelid,
Yeah.
no eye sockets, you know, like an almond shaped face, you know, like all of those stylized Japanese features.
Mm-hmm.
So the characters don't really even look, like, racialized.
Yeah, it's like Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody in a Final Fantasy game looks Asian.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
In a stylized way.
Yeah.
So yeah, Vicky and Angela show up, and, like, Sam's like, I don't know why you guys are here so early.
They never explain why they're there, but...
No. And it, like we were saying earlier, it's like, it feels like a setup to, like, a secret relationship.
Yeah.
But I think they're supposed to be roommates, so I think they just went out to go get coffee early.
Yeah, so they can tell that she's been upset, she's been crying, she's drawn with, like, some wrinkles under her eyes, and, like, a kind of sad
Reddish
expression.
tinge, yeah.
Yeah, and so then Angela immediately gets upset about it, and so then they all try to comfort her, and again, you can tell the voice of the characters, like, if you just saw their speech bubbles in isolation, you'd be able to tell who's who. And so then they all get coffee and sit at a bench, and she explains the situation to them.
Well, not only that, in the first 10 episodes, you see Angela and Vicky, like, really protective of her and almost infantilizing her, but you see Sam constantly saying, like, no, it's okay, no, it's fine, no, I don't need your help, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we were just talking about how Angela and Dee are both, like, protective of Sam. Angela being more aggressive and Dee being a little bit more, like, sweet.
Maternal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say they're both maternal, just one's, like, mama bear and the other one's just,
Right.
like...
The older friend who's trying to provide guidance.
Like a big sister type,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So big sister is Dee, and then mama bear is Angela, and then Vicky is, like, the wise grandma or something. Like, she seems very wise and very,
cool-headed.
Yeah, cool-headed.
It's the stereotypical, there's, like, a trope called red oni, blue oni.
Yeah.
Like, if you've watched a lot of anime, again, there's always, like, the Naruto and the Sasuke.
Yeah, the Mugen and the Jin.
Yeah, Mugen and Jin from Samurai Champloo. So the red-haired Angela is the Naruto, and then the dark blue-haired Vicky is the Sasuke, who's, like, more calm. And you see this dynamic all the time. It's like a very good dynamic to have because it's a very easy way to characterize people, give them strong characterizations quickly.
Yeah.
You know, especially for side characters, you can easily have these characters like have a huge contrast and make their dynamic more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So Angela's like super mad at Marshall. She wants to kick his butt, and then Vicky, you know, kind and patient and wise, holding a cup of tea. Assault would be unwise. What else am I supposed to do? He's really screwed Sam over. I've got to do something. And Angela is the type of person who wants to solve a problem, even though she can't do anything in this scenario.
Yeah.
And then Vicky points out that it was Marshall's fans that took action against Sam, not Marshall himself. It sounds like his fans are more to blame in this instance. And then Sam suddenly realizes, like, oh yeah, it's his fans, but why would they do that? He has millions of fans, and they all think my game is terrible. Will this ruin my reputation as a developer? And then she starts, like, you know, this is the part where you set up that Sam also has a fragile constitution. She starts deep breathing. And this might be why, actually it is why, her friends are very protective of her. Because she's weak. You know, she's physically weak.
Yeah, she's like having a bit of a panic attack. And what I like is that she's not saying, oh my gosh, I think I'm losing it.
I'm having a panic attack.
Yeah, I'm having a panic attack. She just starts hyperventilating.
You see her thoughts kind of spiral. You know,
Yeah.
she's catastrophizing the situation. What if they're right? What if my game is terrible? My first game, what if my career's over? And then she has to take her inhaler.
Yeah.
And she apologizes.
Mhm.
And then Angela says it's okay. He was wrong, Sam. Ruminate is a good game. It's a bit different from most games out there, but that's what makes it so great. And then, you know, her friends are just really supportive.
Yeah, and so I think the fact that she said, you know, it's a bit different than most games out there, but that's part of what makes it so great. That's like something sincere, right? She could have just said, you know, who cares what he thinks? Your game is awesome.
Right.
Without saying anything specific about it. But
Right.
the fact that the theme of the game is all about non-confrontation and finding your way out of like confrontational situations using your wits, it actually extends to the theme of like Sam herself.
Yeah, it
right?
reflects her character.
Yeah, and so you can say the same thing about Sam. She's different from most girls out there, but that's part of what makes her so great.
Yeah, and she's not
Right.
drawn as like the most attractive female character, nor does the narrative ever say that she's the most attractive female character. Unlike Laura Olympus.
Yeah, and so
Even Angela's drawn as more attractive than Sam is.
yeah, more conventionally attractive.
Yeah, more conventionally attractive.
And you know, she's got a short bob, kind of. She has like the hallmark of like a dorky looking character, right? Like the tropes that people would associate with a dorky character. She can't see without her glasses, and she kind of dresses in a way that's a little bit schlubby.
And she's
right?
socially oblivious.
Yeah.
Slightly.
And so then, you know, Angela says that she's a cosplayer, and she invites her to come over later, and Vicky says she's making chicken dumplings, and then Sam says she can't because she's got to do laundry. So, and then they say, well, do you need us to walk you back to your apartment in case you bump into Marshall, being referred to as Marshmallow again? She goes, I appreciate the offer, but I'll be fine on my own. And then again, we get confirmed that she hates confrontation.
Yeah.
Here. So really setting up her character.
And then you also have a nice bit of characterization with Vicky. You find out later that Vicky is a yoga instructor, and you have Vicky, like, the first thing she does after she gets up is, like, start stretching.
Yeah. Yeah. So then she waves them off, and she walks down the street back to her apartment, and then you see just the extensive reach of Marshall's influence. Two random guys on the street are talking about his latest video. And again, they're giving criticism from the point of view of a consumer who doesn't really have any sort of creative insight themselves,
Or
right?
understand even what they aren't even trying to understand what it is that they're critiquing.
Yeah, and so they're just talking about it purely from the perspective of like, oh, this game's too hard to play, therefore it's bad. And so he says, that game looked like complete crap. I know, right? I could build a better game in less than 24 hours. And she worked really hard on it. We saw that, right?
It took her months, if not years.
Yeah. And so the fact that they say, I hope he plays a real game soon, again, specific choice of word real game, that's a big problem with women in the gaming industry, is that people always say, like, they try to gatekeep, well, you're not a real gamer.
Right.
Like, what do you play? Candy Crush or something like that? So just the choice of words, it's pretty good for, like, setting up the theme and how she feels. And it's a short interaction, but it's really effective, especially when you see her facial expression, which is kind of like a lack of expression.
Right.
Right?
She hides her expressions.
Yeah. And
She doesn't, instead of expressing herself, she kind of shuts down and has panic attacks.
Yeah, and that's why you start to see those manifestations of emotions later. Because they're showing that, you know, she's hearing something that would make her really upset, but she has no outward emotions whatsoever.
Right.
So that's the end of chapter 3. And then go into chapter 4 now.
Then we see Sam doing the laundry. You don't have to come over and check up on me. Really overprotective friends.
Yeah.
And again, like comparing to Lore Olympus, they wanted Rachel wanted to set up Demeter as being overprotective, but we never got scenes like this of Demeter. You know, are you sure Persephone? I can come over. I don't even think Persephone ever calls. She never calls Demeter.
No, she thinks to herself, I should call my mom, but she never does. And so it's interesting.
And her mom never calls her. She just shows up.
No, but Angela is working on her cosplay, right?
Yeah,
Just
she's
like
using a sewing machine.
Yeah, just like she said she would be. She's not just in the void answering the phone.
And doing nothing while talking on the phone.
Yeah, and telling like a piece of plot changing information in the middle of an exchange where the two other people in the scene have no idea what she's talking about. So clearly she wasn't talking about that before she got on the phone.
Right.
Just a, random example there. And so then Sam reveals that she was able to successfully avoid Marshall
by using like video game mechanics. There's constant references to video games in the first 10 chapters, which is nice for the theme of the comic. I know that drops off later, which is, I know why there's a lot of there is a lot of criticism where once she gets with Charles, a lot of the video game stuff is kind of dropped. But seeing it in the first 10 chapters was nice.
Yeah, and this is like an effective sequence of panels here because it's comedy and it has to do with the game theme, and then it's also still establishing that she's
characterization,
very non-confrontational, right? So it achieves multiple things at once, and I think none of these are repastes.
No,
I think they're all drawn individually.
Yep.
So
and
that's
also, it also shows that Marshall is kind of oblivious.
Yeah. So
even the one that could have been a repaste, this one and this one isn't.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. So that's pretty cool that she did that. So
yeah, Monty's pretty good at drawing. Like I really like the character designs in the beginning.
Yeah. So she confirms that she avoided him like she was in a horror game. And then Angela says, "You're bound to run into him eventually, right?" And she goes, "He better hope that doesn't happen." But her voice is trembling, obviously. So then a knock on the door, and it's the landlady who's here.
And I think this is the one scene that we both agreed is kind of superfluous.
Yeah, it's superfluous. Like when we go back to the idea of goal-oriented writing, it's like, what's the goal of this scene? Did you achieve that goal, or is there a way that you could have done that better? So we can talk about the scene briefly, and then like what the goal is, and then how it could have been done better. But essentially, what happens is Miss Whipple comes over, and she basically strong arms her into going to greet Marshall.
Yep.
So that they can introduce themselves to each other formally, right? And so Sam doesn't want to go because she says she has to do laundry, but she can't say that she's having problems with Marshall.
Because she would. Her landlady is like meddlesome old lady.
Yeah.
But yeah, this landlady character, the reason I didn't like this scene is because not only is it a large, nondescript apartment building, and it's not like New York or something in like a historic apartment building, which would have like a small landowner, like in, again, Spider-Man 2 with the Russian guy.
Yeah.
Don't try to sneak past me. I have ears like a cat and eyes like a rodent.
Rent!
Yeah, where you would have a relationship with your landowner. This is like a large commercial property, and it's like they're usually run by companies, not a single person, especially not an older person. And so for the landlady to be on like a first name basis with her tenants when it's such a large building, and then wanting to go meet Marshall, that's like a trope in like Japanese manga again. And it's like you're just introducing another character who doesn't really come back in any major way, when you could have accomplished the scene of having Sam and Marshall meet up again. And then at the end of the scene, she kind of warms up to him a little bit. And she's like, "Oh, he's not that bad." And then you have like the whole joke with the stuff written on the boxes, which I guess just introduces that he has friends. But it's like you could have accomplished this by having his friends come over or something and knocking on the wrong door.
Yeah,
I something like that.
Yeah, initially we said instead of avoiding him in the hallway for that gag, although it served multiple purposes, if you wanted to have this exchange right after, you could have just had her
try to avoid him.
You try to avoid him, think she succeeded, but then he catches her.
Right.
And then it's game over.
Right.
Right? A game over thing comes down, and she's like, "Oh, crap." Here it is. Here's the running into. Right? And so they go into his apartment, and Sam says they had met before, and he said, "Yes, we met earlier. It's a pleasure to formally meet you, Miss Young. I hope we get along well as neighbors." And then that's when we see the personal space.
Yeah, the first personification of her emotional state.
Yeah.
And this was kind of an ongoing thing in the first couple chapters, first couple arcs, but then it kind of fell off towards the middle. It's like one of those things where it's like it's a long running webtoon, and she probably lost track of that idea, or it became superfluous as it went on.
Yeah, because I think obviously she doesn't have personal space issues with Link, Dee, Angela, and Vicky. It's only for
with
strangers.
this stranger, yeah.
Yeah, and Marshall stops being a stranger later in the series.
Yeah.
So landlady's a bit of a pervert for like comedic
Yeah.
relief. And so she shakes hands with him. And this is odd as well. Like, why does his hand have to be so warm? I mean, you have him coming out of the shower and his shirt is like clinging to his skin. You can see like patches of translucency. So she could have looked at his hand and then her gaze travels up his forearm, which could be like muscular and veiny, and then up his bicep, and then she sees like he's secretly ripped, and she goes, whoa, he's like, why is he so ripped? I thought he was like a gamer.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of why does his hand have to be so warm? Because I think the spirit of what was trying to be conveyed here is like, I don't know, like, why is he so warm? Like, I don't know, like, why is he so
it's
nice?
it's like why I don't like this guy, so why is it not annoying or repulsive to shake his hand?
Yeah, like cold and clammy and sweaty and stuff like that. So maybe it wouldn't have been better for her to notice that he's
No,
ripped.
she could have been like she could have been like, I don't like this guy, but like, why does he have to be so good looking? Like, it would have been better if he was like some ugly balding dude, you know?
Well, no, because I don't, now thinking about it, I don't think she's thinking he's attractive here. She's just thinking like he's so nice and like warm. Like warm is like to connote somebody who's like friendly and inviting,
Yeah.
right?
Which he is.
So if she looked up at his smile and she goes, why does he have to have such a nice, friendly smile?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why does he have to be so nice? You could
Yeah,
have said something
yeah,
like
something,
that.
yeah. So
You
why does he
know.
have to be so nice?
Yeah, because I think that's the sentiment that's being communicated here. So yeah, the rippling muscles would have been funny. She would have been like, what the heck? I thought he was supposed to be a gamer.
Yeah.
But to connote the same feeling of like the warmth that this guy exudes, why does he have to be so nice, would have been just fine. So he says, whoa, nice gamer callus. And then they start getting to talking about World of Warcraft.
Yeah, which actually makes her really excited.
Yeah, and this is the first time she's like being genuine.
And
with
it
him.
mirrors what Marshall was doing when she said she was the game developer.
Yeah.
So you find out that they actually have a lot in common, even though she doesn't like this guy initially.
Yeah, and so that's also her favorite MMO. And so the landlady goes on to say, okay, like let's see what your place looks like, and then
Nosy lady.
yeah, they go off to another room and start talking about filming
His
equipment,
YouTube stuff.
Yeah, and so then they're like doing banter,
Yeah.
funny banter, and while they're doing that, Sam goes over and sees his boxes that have horrible, disgusting, offensive stuff. I can't believe what I am seeing in a
I can't believe
webtoon.
this was allowed on Webtoon.
This is like so horrible. Oh my god, can you believe that?
It's
Look.
X-rated.
Ball, underline, gags, 2 underlines. Oh my gosh, to draw your eye to it. And look, the biggest box is a box.
I know.
No, that is just unbelievable. So then on to episode 5.
Yep. We get a nice establishing shot of the apartment complex at night.
Yeah.
And we see Sam playing video games. Again, it's like a very consistent thing. Like, I know what her character is.
Yeah.
After the first couple chapters. I'm never like, in one scene, like, why is she acting like that? That's so out of character, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, what the heck is going on? What does she want to do? What does she mean, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that hasn't happened at all. So she's playing video games by herself, looks over at her dog. Thank you for coming to my rescue today, Bowser. And I guess I was confused when I first read this because right after this, it goes into a flashback where she talks to Marshall, and at no point does Bowser come to her rescue. So I think, it would have been better if it was like something about like what you said, where she was eating Chinese food, because at the end of the flashback, she's giving him a recommendation to a Chinese food restaurant. Yeah, a Chinese food restaurant.
I mean, you could also, since she flashes back to the exact moment where she's looking at the boxes that she assumes like have personal effects in them, you could even have it where she's like, I don't know, like instead of she's playing video games because that's part of her character, but she could see something or do something that kind of jogs her memory, and then she goes, oh yeah, like that was so awkward, right? And then cut back to that moment in time. I mean, the Chinese food would have been easy because she gives him that recommendation, but going from her hand to thinking about the boxes and then cutting to her like with a camera as she's hovering over the boxes, presumably to get some blackmail material, is like, I guess maybe you could say like I misjudged him. Like I thought he was like some kind of sicko with those boxes. Like he's got all this stuff in there, like just boxes upon boxes of this stuff. But it
you
was
could
just
even
quotes.
have her hear him, like, starting up his video.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it sounds like Marshall's starting to film, and he's not super loud yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, you know, maybe I misjudged him, maybe Vicky's right or something, and then you do the flashback.
Yeah, something like that, to connect them more, because the dog thing was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And that was like that morning, and so
Yeah.
she sees the box is actually full of clothes, and then he comes out to quickly explain
Mm-hmm.
to her that it's just his friends, and they wrote them on the boxes as a joke, and I had to throw out 6 other boxes due to their vulgar graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
And so Miss Whipple obviously says, ooh, I should meet these friends. They're so funny. And so then they leave, because she says us girls can get a bite to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the Chinese food would make the most sense. And so he says, Sam, I'm going to order some Chinese takeout. I bet you know the best places in this area. Any recommendations? She just glares at him, and he says, or not. And she's about to leave when she gives him the recommendation for the Lotus Palace. She says, has good food, fast delivery, and they're reasonably priced. You can't go wrong with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then he thanks her, she leaves, and we cut back to the present. And then she says, maybe I was being too hard on Marshall. Well, Vicky said he didn't tell his fans to do what they did. And so that's when he starts his stream when they're about to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super duper loud. And he's got the box of the takeout there.
Mm-hmm. Good attention to detail.
Yeah, and it's like such a low bar, but it's so refreshing to see.
Very refreshing.
Right. And so she thinks to herself, he's recording a video at this hour, but he looked completely exhausted.
And that's set up for like a later plot where it's like we establish that the way he acts in real life and the way he acts on camera is totally different.
Yeah.
Not like us. We're totally like this in real life.
100%.
100%.
Yes.
What you see is what you get.
Absolutely. And so he's playing his horror game, so obviously there's going to be a lot of screaming and jump scares, and that was also established earlier, right? And so he goes until 3:20 in the morning, and she wasn't able to get a wink of sleep. So that's the end of episode 5. Okay, so that was the first 5 episodes of Let's Play. I think we said at the beginning of this video that we read the first 10 episodes.
We read the first 10 episodes.
Yeah, in preparation. So, I mean, obviously the detail in which we're covering these episodes is going a lot faster than in Lore Olympus.
Yeah, I think it's like the first episode, or the first video that we did on Lore Olympus, we didn't cover as many episodes in detail because the first 40 or so episodes of Lore Olympus are not that bad.
No.
Where you're going like panel by panel and going like, what the F, you know?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean the art is what it is. I mean Manji's art style is fairly consistent. I would say that the art, like the way that she draws the characters gets better at some point.
Yeah.
But then I don't like the way that she draws the eyes.
Yeah.
I really like the way that she draws the eyes in these early episodes way more.
Right. I guess they become kind of squarish looking.
They look like Sonic the Hedgehog eyes.
Yeah, I guess it might have just been easier for her to draw like that.
I think at some point she
something,
said she suffered from a hand injury from doing Let's Play.
Oh, yeah.
But she draws like that even when she's not under time pressure. Like for her art that she puts on her Twitter account still looks like that.
Yeah.
Which is just like, that's kind of unfortunate that the art style changed so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that's one of those things that's, like, subjective, you know, an art style, like,
It's not really subjective because you think the art style for Lore Olympus is really ugly.
Yeah, so that's subjective. Some people think it looks great. Some people.
Well, it's technically terrible. It's technically terrible, like in terms of anatomy,
yeah, in terms
color
of anatomy
theory,
and stuff like that.
I would say the weaknesses of Let's Play. I think she gets better at anatomy.
Yeah.
She gets better at facial proportions, but I don't like the way that she draws the eyes.
Yeah,
like those square eyes that are like too close together.
Yeah, the thing that I like the least about her later art is that it looks very stiff.
Yeah, that too.
And it doesn't really convey a lot of motion. I know there's like one chapter that you showed me a screenshot of where there was like motion lines and like an action in asterisks, but the person was like frozen.
Right.
Right? And it's like, are they supposed to be like moving or something? Because they're not moving at all, you know? And one of my favorite things to like play with in terms of stylization and stuff is how to make a still 2-dimensional image look like it's conveying a lot of motion.
Yeah.
With stylization, right? I did that a lot. Again, in Rage, do that DCG. A little bit. Yeah, DCG, Butterfly Dream, a little bit of an art shift when there's a lot of motion to convey like fluidity and movement and stuff like that, because I struggle a lot with sound effects. I don't know where to put them in a way that looks natural, especially for color comics. I just feel like they're kind of like
Oh yeah, color comics. I think sound effects are kind of obtrusive.
Yeah.
I think the best sound effects that I've seen in comics are like manga sound effects because maybe it's because I can't read Japanese, but they look they look like part of the art.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like they're very stylized in a way that's aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
But then again, I've read manga, like I bought the volume and it's translated. The sound effects are translated, but they still look like that. So I don't know, but I think it's just the black and white aspect too, because when you have like giant letters that are like red and white, it can be really ugly.
Yeah.
Over a colored image.
Yeah.
So I tend to pick a solid color like white or the line art color, which comes off as black to your eye.
Yeah.
And outline it in white, and try to make them either part of the image or unobtrusive.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like you said, with color comics, it's difficult to figure out where to place them.
Yeah, I hated doing sound effects in Butterfly Dream. Like, it was painful. I felt like it was ruining the final product. I was like, I don't want to put them there, but I don't know if I try
to minimize them.
Yeah, I don't know if it, like, if I was successful in conveying motion enough that people would know what's happening unless I put them in, right? So just to err on the side of caution, I put them in, but I didn't like the end result. I thought it looked so slapdash, because it was an afterthought, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of put them in there. It's like, okay, let's just do a sound effect, right? And I feel like she kind of does the same thing later, where she's like, well, this person's supposed to be moving, but I'm not going to waste a lot of time trying to make it look super dynamic, so I'll just put in a sound effect to convey motion.
Right.
So I understand that, but it's just unfortunately one of the things that's like a downgrade. Because the early art looks really nice and fluid. There's lots of body language.
Yeah, I can tell she uses like the CGI models though.
Oh yeah.
Don't you think? Like, it looks like it's traced over a model at points.
I mean, I didn't really notice it as much. Probably if I went back and was paying like close attention to the art, I would notice. But for the most part, like, there seems to be variation enough in proportions and like body types between characters that I didn't really notice.
I don't think so. I think the character body types are very similar.
Yeah, it's like there's a later scene where she has a bunch of like extras, like NPCs in the background, and I looked at that panel for quite a bit, and they all look pretty different. Like, the landlady doesn't look like she's traced over.
No, but like the main character and Marshall, and then Link, and then Angela and Vicky.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything that looked super stiff, like it was traced in the first 10 chapters. I mean, I could go back if that becomes like a problem later on where everything looks traced and stiff. But for these initial chapters, nothing stuck out where it's like why do they look like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, why is their
It
head
could just be
so...
the art style as well.
Yeah.
Where she like gives people fairly similar body types.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, first impressions, doesn't seem to be anything like egregiously wrong with the art and the scripting. It looks like she has a script that she's following, because she does set up and pay off successfully in these
fairly continuously.
Yeah.
As the comic is going on.
Yeah, and the continuity is really good. The characterization is really good. The voices of the characters. I mean, it's not like, obviously it's not the best thing I've ever read, but you compare it to the other stuff, like the top stuff on Webtoon Original.
Right,
in the same genre, like Midnight Poppyland.
And Lore Olympus. Those are like the big three that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Midnight Poppyland and Lore Olympus are like way worse. Like, Lore Olympus, I hate read. I really don't like it. And then Midnight Poppyland, it gets boring after a while for me. I mean, it's still comical. There's still like hilarious parts. I think it's still like, it shares a lot in common with Lore Olympus, actually, with like the giant body hiding freezer of a male character.
His hands are so like...
the hand fetish that's apparently going on.
You gotta call him the claw.
Yeah.
His hand is like a big
his hands get so much focus, and they're drawn, like, rendered so horrifically sometimes.
Yeah, death claw hands.
Yeah, yaoi hands.
Yeah.
And the art kind of gets like really weird as it goes on. But I would say Midnight Poppyland, like, there were so many points where I was just like, what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't feel that way when I read Let's Play. Like, when I read Let's Play, it's like, I understand what's going on. I guess the tone isn't, like, some people don't like the tone when it comes to, like, the meta humor and, I guess, the accidental racism.
Yeah.
And, like, the way that Charles is depicted in their relationship. And, like, there are definitely cringy moments where, like, the comic gets really thirsty and it's, like, cringy for me to read. And I'm just like, how did this get on Webtoon? But it's, like, more competently done than either Midnight Poppyland or Lore Olympus.
Yeah.
And in terms of the stuff that everyone finds problematic, I mean, we've explained our stance on, like, the racism, the age gap, and, like, the way that Sam is portrayed. I will say that Sam, once they start their relationship, Sam becomes really annoying.
Yeah.
Because she's always stuttering and stammering. But I think that's supposed to show you, like, I think the intent with Charles and Sam is to contrast their relationship with Marshall and Sam, where whenever she talks to Marshall, she, like, is always sure of herself, confident. She never stutters and stammers and, like, feels unsure of herself or unsettled around him.
Right.
Like, the whole point is that Marshall and Sam are endgame, and Charles is just a stepping stone for her.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the disappointment from the fans and the negative reaction is kind of like what you were talking about, expectations versus reality, like what the audience thought the story was going to do,
Right.
and then what was actually done, and that comes down to the intentions of the writer and how successfully she was able to set that up and then pay it off, right? And so you could argue, like, well, there definitely could have been ways that Manji could have made it more clear that that's what the direction of the story was, because I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't know how it plays out because I haven't read it, but given the timeline and how long it's gone on for, and the fact that Marshall and Sam are supposed to be endgame, and then having a little bit of familiarity with what's going on currently, like where the series is, that seems kind of convoluted, and it seems like it wasn't really paced correctly.
No, definitely not.
Across.
I think, like, if Marshall and Sam are endgame, then we've spent, like, most of the series at this point with Charles and Sam, which is just, like...
Why?
If he's, like, the stepping stone, like, why is Marshall the main love interest, like, a side character in his own story?
Like, hey, he was supposed to be the stepping stone, not the stepping mountain.
Yeah.
Alright? You know, so, definitely like that, and then that becomes a question of, like, was she intending to do that all along, or did she change her mind because
I think she did, because in the beginning it was all about the gaming and, like, her aspirations as a developer, and, like, that plot line becomes, like, sidelined for a long time, like maybe an entire season, and then you kind of only are coming back to it now, but it's like, it's kind of like the same thing with, like, other webtoons I've read. It's like a common thing with webtoons. They start off one way, and then the creator loses track of the pacing, because, again, you underestimate how long it takes to translate a plot line to a webtoon, because webtoons are such an inefficient method of storytelling. I don't know if I can say this enough. Like, webtoons are, like, one of the least efficient methods of storytelling that you could possibly do. Like, if you want to write an epic, write a book, dude. Don't do a webtoon.
No, it takes forever.
It takes forever. That's gonna be, like, a life sentence.
Yeah, especially because, you know, people want it to be in color, and they want long chapters every week. And the vertical scroll, you have to be, like, more intentional. I think if you look at the efficiency of paneling on, like, a standard 8.5 by 11 page or manga size page, the amount that you can put in there and then the amount of motion that you can get across with the sequential paneling is a lot more efficient in the traditional page style than with a webtoon.
Sorry, guys, I just changed the framing because we had camera troubles, that I realized that the framing was totally off. So you guys were probably looking into our nostrils.
We got really up close and personal
for like 5 minutes. I'm not gonna cut that out though, because I thought the conversation was useful. But yeah, I would say that in terms of storytelling, webcomics are very inefficient. And then if you compare a manga to a webcomic, I think manga, because there's editorial standards, just the plotting is much tighter. It tends to be much tighter. Webtoons, because they're indie and it's a lot of amateur writers, they don't really know what they're getting into. You know, they don't really know what they're getting into. They don't have a professional editor guiding them in the process. They're not planning their series with, like, you know, plot beat to plot beat. X number of panels are going to be allocated to this scene, X number to that scene. Like, and, like, again, you don't have to, but it makes things much easier for you, and then it makes it a lot easier to control your pacing. Because if you are aware of how many panels you're spending on XYZ plotline, you won't have the thing where it's like, oh, Charles and Sam was supposed to be, like, a stepping stone to Marshall and Sam, but now they've been going on for, like, a year now. You know? And it's like, you gotta speed that plot line up. I can't snap with his hand, but you gotta speed that plot line up.
You can't snap?
Not with my left hand.
Wow. That's, like,
embarrassing.
Wow, yeah, just stop.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna leave that in the video for people to see, but I just don't even. Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I think just observationally, you can say with a high degree of accuracy that the majority of people who try to start webcomics or who start webcomics are probably artists first, story writers second.
Of course.
Right? And so they think it's a neat idea to make a quick little story with their original characters, and where they excel is in character design and expressions and drawing and colors, right? You're likely to see a lot more webtoons if you go through Canvas of beautifully, like, rendered comics but when it comes to like story and writing and stuff, it's not as strong.
Right.
Right. And so
Rather than the reverse.
yeah, rather than like what this is hard to look at, but the story's great. Like
Right.
you know, One Punch Man.
Right.
The original One Punch Man had great writing and great humor. And that's why it became such a phenomenon, because the art added to the charm.
I guess Tower of God's like the one exception to that.
Yeah.
Where it started off really shaky on the art front, but the story was really unique.
Yeah. And it's sad because it's like, I mean, Attack on Titan was kind of the same way.
Yeah.
He taught himself to draw because
Yep.
he really wanted to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, okay, I'm good enough to the point that I can do this without embarrassing myself. So, I mean, that's definitely good, but there's like, yeah, you can definitely say there's like a sizable difference between the skill of the art, like the visual art, and then the actual storytelling. A lot of the storytelling is very superficial and it's
Tropey.
It's super tropey, and it's not very plotted out in terms of like how it fits with the visual medium of visual storytelling. You have a lot of telling instead of showing, and
That's even a problem with Korean comics too, though.
Yeah,
It's
of
not
course.
limited to like Lore Olympus Let's Play.
No,
One of them that you were talking about was
the Forever Darling.
that one. Yeah.
That one was like entirely based around one cool scene and then reverse engineered. Like, okay, if we wanted to have the scene where some, like, oh, I know it would be such a cool idea. You find a little sticky note that says, if you're reading this, you've been cloned. Okay, now how do we come up with a story for that? And then it's like they went backwards from there, and it's like, no.
It's like an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Like, don't do that. Start with the premise first, and then think about the cool ideas that fit into the premise. Because if you do the backwards thing, like that Forever Darling comic has so many things that don't make sense from a world building perspective.
Right.
That it's like frustrating to read,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a lot of people think it's really good because has a lot of those wham moments, which again in the vertical scroll format, it makes it difficult to keep track of all the world building and plot points and things like that. But like the art is very unique, and then the wham moments, that's all people read it for.
I would argue
So.
that the same thing applies to Everything is Fine.
Yeah, everything is fine.
The art's not that great.
No.
Storytelling's, I guess, a notch above the average American webtoon, but yeah, I'm not a fan of Everything is Fine.
No.
Some of the reveals and some of the like shocking plot twists, I was like, oh my god, this is dumb, bro.
the Faraday cage.
No, the bit where she kills the guy and
Yeah.
then they never find out.
The cop. Even though
yeah,
it's
that
like
was when I stopped reading.
Total surveillance. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like the worst version of 1984.
No, but it's like 1984 set in the modern day.
Yeah.
And it's like if 1984 were set in the modern day, like, you'd be done.
That's it.
That's
know?
it.
Ball game's over.
Yeah, ball game's over. There's no way around that.
Yeah, with the modern technology we have now.
Yeah.
So, and then again, it's like there's lots of dropped plot threads, or you start to question the world building, and then there's so many like problems with the world building where it's like, well, how come, if that's the case, then how come that didn't happen in an earlier chapter?
Right.
And it's because it's really hard to do the balancing act of drawing and writing at the same time, especially when you're like, dude, I could do that, but that would take like 40 more panels. And I don't want to do that.
I think the best way to approach that, honestly, is to plan out your story as much as you can, but keep it simple.
Yeah.
I think Let's Play fell into that fallacy of too many characters, too many plot lines, and she got stuck on the Charles and Sam plot line. I think Everything is Fine. It's not that they have too many characters. Like, Everything is Fine has like the ideal number of characters, but I don't think the creator of Everything is Fine anticipated it to blow up and then move to a weekly schedule as fast as it did. And I don't think I think he was trying to think of cool moments like the Lost effect, where he was like, oh, what'll keep the readers on their seats? And then kind of wrote the story around that instead of writing the story first and having the idea, like the mystery in mind, and then gearing the story around that. Like that's the difference between like Attack on Titan and Lost.
Yeah.
Attack on Titan easily could have been like a Lost situation where it's like mystery upon mystery upon mystery compounding and no answers. But I think where Attack on Titan succeeded and Lost failed is that Isayama knew the answers before he started drawing.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when you read it again, knowing what happens later, everything that happens kind of foreshadows what's going to come eventually. And there's not a moment where you're just like, but wait a minute, how come XYZ didn't happen?
Right.
Or there's not many of them.
Yeah.
Either he, like, really tightly plotted it, and I think he plotted, like, probably 70-80%. Like, the biggest details, he'd already plotted out.
Yeah.
And then whatever else he didn't plot out, he was really good at finding ways to integrate it into the main plot.
Right, and it took a lot of iterating before he settled on like a final draft. And you can tell he did that because just look at the title of the first episode, the first chapter, right? So it's like the proof is in the pudding right there. He knew all along. It's not like a situation where it's like, did you know that she committed the act of wrath? Yeah. And it's like, no, you didn't. Get out of here. Just leave. Get out of here. You know? So, yeah, that's definitely good. And you know, other comics like there's another webtoon called I Love You.
Oh yeah.
I've seen it mentioned in passing. People say it's really good and it balances like tragic comedy pretty well and romance. But I've heard that they've been stuck in the flashback for like 30 chapters.
I've
now.
heard that I Love You starts off well, but
Yeah.
then it like gets really slow at
Yeah.
some point, and then it drags on for like years.
Yeah, and I think the slowing down happens when like an author or like a writer doesn't know what to do next, so they just kind of like slow down the pacing so they can buy themselves time.
That happens in Let's Play too.
Yeah.
I think, and the other thing I think is happening is that Webtoon wants a long running series because it's like syndicated TV.
Yeah.
The longer your show runs, the more advertising revenue you get, the more fast pass coins you get. So they want to keep the top series running as long as possible, even if the story only has runway for like 1 or 2 seasons.
I don't know how that's possible. It sounds like a lot. Like, how do you come up with more stuff, right? If you
Especially
already...
for something like Let's Play, which has such a
Yeah.
simple premise.
Exactly. Like, if you already have like an idea of the ending in mind, I wonder almost then, like, if Charles was supposed to be the stepping stone, if she had to like draw it out a lot.
Yeah, because Link is a stepping stone to Charles. He's the first stepping stone, but like she never really has a real relationship with Link.
Yeah.
And then, but that only lasts for like maybe 20 chapters.
Right.
But Charles, like we've been in the Charles arc for like a year.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I think it's because Webtoon is trying to milk it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Lore Olympus. Like the series feels like it should have ended at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
And it's still going. And it's like there's no plot left.
Yeah.
You know, like we're just watching like an extended epilogue. I was just gonna say, especially for romance webtoons where the central plot is the romance, it's very difficult to have a long-running romance unless, again, there's like an A-plot that justifies why the stakes are so high and why the two characters haven't gotten together yet, especially when they're adults.
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck, bro?
Right.
Like, just ask them out.
Right.
Story's over, you know?
Yeah. And then even in non-romance comics, like you have Carnaby Kim's 3 series that are really popular. You've got, Sweet Home, you've got Shotgun Boy, and you've got Bastard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of the amount of time that's covered in each of those series, the time and the location is very limited.
Right.
Like he's got it limited to like one apartment complex in Sweet Home,
Mm-hmm.
and then like a couple days, I think, in Shotgun Boy where they're at like a summer camp. And
Right.
same thing with Bastard, is you got like a boy and his father, and the cast is limited, and it's not like taking place over like years and months and stuff
Right.
like that, because it's like a suspense thriller series,
Mm-hmm.
and so you got to keep the pacing pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And even those series where it only covers a couple days, they're stretched to like 50, 60 episodes or more, right?
I think that's because Webtoons, like, the amount of panels per episode is limited. But we ran into that problem, too, with, like, so our first comic was, like, an attempt at a Naruto rewrite, and that was when we had way too many characters, because we were like, oh, yeah, Naruto has so many characters, we're gonna do tons of characters, too, and we'll have so many fans who are fans of our cool character design.
No, we'll do 10 characters each.
And each character will have, like, this really big arc that, like, reveals, like, secret mysteries about the character.
Oh
It's
my
like, this
God.
comic is gonna take 20 years, bro.
No, it's so
I'll be
bad.
in a retirement home by the time this comic is done.
Yeah, it was
You know,
terrible.
and I'll have a carpal tunnel.
No, the approach to writing, it was horrible. Like, oh, you're gonna love what I have. And it's like, dude, you wrote that and it contradicted everything I said.
Yeah.
Like, approaching the writing like it was a stupid role play, like a guy online role play or something dumb like that.
But then our second comic, we learned from the mistake of the first one.
Yeah.
The second comic's DCG. That's actually on Webtoon right now.
We're not ashamed to do
We're not ashamed of DCG. It's like my magnum opus. I'll never be able to draw like that again. Because it was 2 of us working on it. And we cut the characters. There's a very limited cast in DCG.
Yeah.
And we kind of have like major arcs. And
Yeah.
we thought it would be like 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we ran into the thing where it's like the first 3 episodes that we scripted out ended up being like 8 episodes.
Right, yeah.
And it's the same thing where it's like you don't know what the translation is between like script to thumbs unless you actually thumb it out.
Yeah.
You can go in and go like, oh yeah, like these plot points will only cover like 3 episodes. Surprise, surprise. Even with 80 panels a chapter, it still went to like 7, 8 episodes.
Yeah.
And it was only when I started writing my own comic, Black Queen, that I was able to translate directly from script to final
Same.
with like any sort of accuracy as to like, okay, this is gonna probably be around like 50 panels.
Yeah.
Even then I would end up going over when I finally thumbed it. It'd probably be like, I'd be like, oh, 50 panels, and it would end up being like 60 panels.
Yeah, that's when I started doing the same thing. Like, I would set out to do like 30 panels or 40 panels, and it ended up being like 45, 50. So that's when I started to write in the actual description of the panels that have no dialogue. Because if you just do the dialogue panels by themselves, yeah, that's 30 panels. But then to help the pacing, you need like other panels that are not dialogue, where you show like motion or movement from one place to another.
I did that, but I would have like one sentence like, main character goes to the kitchen, and then the next line would be like, opens a cabinet, and third line pulls out a glass.
Yeah.
I wouldn't describe the panel, but I would be like, okay, which one would correspond to which panel? This action of going to the kitchen, opening a cabinet, and grabbing a glass is probably going to be 3 to 4 panels.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I still underestimated by like 5 or 6 panels.
Yeah, that's why I had to write the exact descriptions, because I would be like, okay, so large panel showing the gas station, large panel, and I would put the pixel size in as well. Like, okay, this is 18 squares of the canvas, large panel of J, small panel of J wiping his eye, large panel of J walking to the gas station, small panel as he exhales, the same size panel as he looks to the side, and then panel. So every single panel I started typing out the description, so I had an accurate count of how many were in there, and then I would thumb it out, and then if I needed to add another panel, I'd go back to the script and add it in as another panel.
Yeah, for me, I couldn't translate a script. Like I didn't have the visual powers to be able to visualize it fully while scripting.
Yeah.
I would usually have my script be like 80% of the way there, and then my finals would be like the thumbs.
Yeah.
You know, and then I would even make slight changes to the wording, although I would never change the story. I never changed the story. I would be like, all of the story is decided by the script, and from the script to the thumbs is like adding a few panels or like changing a little bit of the wording or maybe adding some expositional dialogue.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that to say that, you know, the problem that I see with a lot of these webtoons is that it's like most of these guys, this is their first webtoon.
Yeah.
They're amateurs and they don't know how to translate like script to thumbs and accurately gauge the length of a plot that they have planned out.
Yeah.
So that's causing problems when it comes to pacing, not knowing how to translate a script or not planning your comic well enough to be able to have it as efficient as possible.
Yeah. So
the plot ends up running long, or they underestimate the amount of time that it would take to execute the plot, so it ends up running long. I can tell you there are filler episodes in Let's Play as it goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other problem is obviously the Webtoon angle, where it's like, how much of this is being pushed by Webtoon?
Yeah.
So I would say that's like pretty much every Webtoon that I've read has pacing problems. The only exception being like Cursed Princess Club.
Yeah, I don't know how she did that. That is like really good.
She planned it.
Yeah, she planned it, but like even though she planned it, it's like you still expect Webtoon to be like, okay, but you have to stretch it out a little bit. So her planning to stretch it out, like she decided to extend, like whichever part she decided to extend, she extended really well to the point that you don't notice.
You can't tell that it's like
dragging in some areas where it's like, well, she didn't intend for this to go on for this long, but for the purpose of it being a long-running series on Webtoon, she had to stretch it out.
Yeah, but I think that's like she had a benefit, like unlike Let's Play, which is a straight rom-com office romance. You can't really stretch that plot.
Yeah.
There's no fantasy elements. There's no like huge cast of characters with side plots that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I think Cursed Princess Club has like the perfect setup where it's like either it can be a short story and limited in scope, or she could extend the scope and make the story go on longer.
Yeah.
Because she had enough to work with.
Yeah, she had a central mystery or a central plot that was different from the romance aspect of it that she could work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so you weren't just constantly focusing on the romance and being like, why aren't these characters together?
Right.
There's an obstacle to the characters getting together in Cursed Princess Club.
And there's like a central mystery, and there's a large cast of characters.
Yeah.
But they're not like focused on to the point that you expect them to keep showing up. She just introduces a character and goes like, oh, this is a cool character. And if she needed to like stall or like she needed to extend the storyline, she could easily pivot to another character, focus on that character for a bit, then pivot back to the main story. Like she did a really good job doing that, and Lore Olympus could have easily done that because she had the runway given the fantasy setting and like all the intrigue she was doing. She was just not very organized.
Yeah.
Like the level of organization shows the final result.
Right.
With Let's Play, it's like I feel like there's like executive meddling, and then she didn't realize how long the Charles and Sam plotline was gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also like just filler as it goes on. It's like, oh, the whole scene where Link has lunch with Angela and Vicky. I guess it's because Link and Angela end up together eventually. But like between the last Link and Angela interaction and that interaction was like 30 chapters. It's like the same thing as like Lore Olympus, where it's like I haven't seen this character in like 30 chapters.
Jeez. With the lasagna.
But that's just a problem when it's like you have too many characters, too many plot lines.
Yeah.
It's like the same, the same theme over and over again.
Yeah. So I guess the takeaway from this episode was really just talking about like the themes that were established. We talked a lot about criticism and non-confrontation. And then from the creative perspective about how nice it is to see some continuity, some scripting, some sequential storytelling. And so that was the first 5 episodes, and I am excited to see where the journey takes us. And I'm probably going to be eating those words later when we get to the flower scene.
Oh god,
I'm
it
like,
gets
no.
it gets really cringy. I'm not gonna lie, it
Yeah.
gets really cringy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to the point where it's like I can't imagine like talking about it on YouTube.
Oh god.
It's really
It's
bad.
going to be a Patreon exclusive
Yeah.
at that point.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but depending on like what your reaction is,
Yeah.
we might continue this or we could just go with our initial thoughts here. But
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
we'd start a new webtoon series because like Lore Olympus, like to be honest, we slag on it so much that it's like, oh my god, I'm like dreading filming another Lore Olympus video.
Yeah, I know. I sat down to watch The Woman King the other day. I told you about this over the phone. I was like, dude, I watched The Woman King, and all I could think about was how it accomplished everything so much better than Lore Olympus did with like a bunch of different things
Yeah.
with like, you know, parent-child dynamics, the rebellious 19-year-old woman, main character, the romance, all these different things that were
Yeah.
done so much better in that movie. But it's like Lore Olympus has infected my brain, and like even in this video we kept comparing Let's Play to Lore Olympus, and it's like, yeah, you can do that to like bolster your point and compare something, but I don't like doing that. Like I just want to stop thinking about Lore Olympus for like 1 week.
The only time I want to think about Lore Olympus is with a rewrite, because I think my rewrite would be really fun to work on.
Yeah.
But like speaking of the rewrite, we're planning on filming a video on how we would redesign the characters in Lore Olympus.
Yeah.
And that's like a soft pitch for a rewrite. But yeah, like full disclosure, which is like my catchphrase now. Full disclosure, I have a full-time job, and working on a comic is very, very laborious. It's very time intensive, and that would probably be something that we would have to kind of plan around, and especially if we're going to continue doing YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just have to get the logistics for that in place. Definitely going to put it on our own website and like rip our comics off of Webtoon.
Yeah. No.
Because Webtoon sucks.
Yeah, Webtoon, you had your chance, all right? You don't get to have our comics anymore, okay? So we're gonna silently scrub those from the website and put them someplace else where people can read them and enjoy them. And yeah, I mean, apart from that, we hope you guys enjoyed the video. We hope you learned something or were at least like entertained. Sorry if we didn't bash it as hard as you might have wanted.
Yeah,
to.
sorry if we weren't like so angrily down on Let's Play.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, if we make it to the part where it gets really, really bad, we won't hold back for your delight and
delectation and delight.
Yeah. And so, apart from that, yeah, if you like this video, give it a like. Feel free to leave a comment about your thoughts below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And stay tuned for a couple other things we have.
If you dislike Let's Play and you legitimately think it's worse than Lore Olympus, please let us know why. Because I don't want to be like mean or anything, but I'm like confused. Like I'm legitimately confused because from what I've read of Lore Olympus and what I've read of Let's Play, I've read both of them.
Yeah.
I legitimately think that Let's Play compared to Lore Olympus is like comparing like The Simpsons to like something actually offensive, like Twilight.
Yeah.
Well, The Simpsons is actually good.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not even The Simpsons. It'd be like Twilight versus like High School Musical.
Yeah.
It's like High School Musical isn't that bad. It's like cheesy and kind of lame.
Yeah.
And there's like some racial stereotyping.
Yeah, so there's like stereotyping around, you know, I would say like Sharpay's brother Ryan is like what's going on. Yeah.
He's stuck in the closet forever.
Yeah, like what the heck? You're gonna tease us with I Don't Dance, and then he just like acts off.
Corbin Blue and
Yeah.
Lucas.
Yeah, like come on, like what's with that, right? And so yeah, like yeah, High School Musical is like that level of like, okay, this is
Kind of lighthearted.
Yeah, whatever.
Kind of lame,
Yeah.
enjoyable.
yeah, and then like Lore Olympus is like Twilight, where
Yeah,
it's like,
where it's like, wow, this is actually like offensive.
imprinting on a baby.
Yeah.
Really?
What's your problem? Oh. Do tell her, Jacob.
This should be good. You know we have no control over it. We can't choose who it happens with, and it doesn't mean what you think, Bella. I promise.
You imprinted on my daughter?
What the heck? You know?
That was like the worst character assassination
Yeah.
It was like if Rachel Smythe had Minty like
Imprinting on a baby.
on a baby.
Hey, Thetis, give me your baby, Thetis.
Exactly.
I want to see your baby. Bring me your baby.
Exactly.
Don't do that.
Exactly.
Rachel, if you're watching this, you better not. Don't let her touch that baby, all right? Don't make this another Twilight.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I would compare to, like, High School Musical and Twilight.
Yeah.
So if you legitimately believe that Let's Play is worse, then, like, drop a comment, explain yourself, because I would be interested in, like, seeing why, because, like, maybe I'm missing something, misremembering, because it has been a while since I've read Let's Play, like, in its entirety. I've read it off and on over the years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it might be worse than I remembered.
And there might be some suppressed memories in there.
I just remember, like, the black baby reveal, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, good old Manji.
And then, like, Sam being, like, tied up and, like, attacked by a black guy in her imagination.
Yeah.
And then, like, cringy stuff, but I don't remember, like, it being, like, infuriating in terms of dropped plots.
Yeah.
Because the stakes aren't that high. She's not promising anything more than, like, a dumb shoujo manga.
Yeah. So, okay, well, that being said, I guess this is where we depart.
Yeah.
Where we conclude our thoughts, and we might come back with another, 5-6 episodes here or there. So, yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you guys later.
Yep. See ya.